Hey, so what I've got in my hand here is an Epiphone Casino. These are most famous for the Beatles having used them. On the earliest Beatles stuff, Paul McCartney played a lot of the guitar solos, like the gainy guitar solos on this, and then later on they all had them, and that's kind of when the Beatles stopped having like the jangly rhythms guitar stuff, and it's more like the lead stuff. And so, anybody who has one of these like later issue casinos is probably familiar with just kind of how woolly, like dull and dark these P90s sound. They're really hot wound, and then they've got these covers that really, I guess they take off the high frequency as well. And so for the past couple years, this guitar has been my kind of main player. I use this whenever I'm playing shows, and I try to use it recording, but the muffled, like the woolly, it's just the sound is just not there. So when I got this, it was actually like a dumpster find, and it was unplayable. But I put a lot of work into it, and it plays really nice. I love playing it. But yeah, as I was saying, like the sound out of the pickups is just like not been doing for me. Like at shows that, I can dial in like the amp, I can make it brighter, and they kind of make up for it, and it doesn't really matter because everything just gets kind of lost in the mix. But like especially on a recording, it's just, I don't know, it's just something about the sound has not been satisfying for me, and especially the bridge, like and also like the type of stuff I'm playing, I kind of want like that jangly. I want that option for a lot of like the rhythm stuff I'm doing, like just like stuff like that. It just doesn't like through this guy. It's not sounding that good. So what I've done is I've got a set of these GFS NY2 pickups, which are basically P90s made to look and sound like a Dynasonic pickup, which is a popular pickup on like Gretsch guitars and a number of other guitars in the 50s. And so I'm hoping at least I want to start by swapping out the bridge, and I think I'll stop there because I use the neck a lot at shows, and it's fine. But the bridge is the one that really just like doesn't do it for me. So I'm hoping that this pickup will sound all right in this guitar and just kind of make this guitar a bit more satisfying for me and more usable. And so I've looked at it a bit, and as you can see, this pickup fits entirely within the footprint of the dogear P90. So that's good, I guess. And then, but it's too high to fit just straight under here. It's touching the strings if I just kind of slide it under there. So what I think I'll have to do is route the body a little bit to get this guy to sit just like a little bit lower. Like I'm talking like a millimeter maybe. And so if I change my mind at some point, like I'll be able to put like a dogear P90 back on, or just put the same pick up back on, and just totally cover the hole that I have to route to put this guy on. So I guess so. That's my project here, and I'm gonna just kind of show, and then I'll do like a before and after sound, so we can compare whether this guy improves the sound or makes it worse. So I wanted to mention like a notable point of reference. Eddie Cochran, one of the early rock and roll guys, he had like a combination kind of like this with a dogear P90 in the neck position of his hollow body Gretsch, and then a Dynasonic on the bridge. And so I'm not really playing that style of music, but like that palette of tones does appeal to me. Like to have just the whole gamut from just the bright jangle or twang, and then to like the more heavy, thicker sounds from like a P90. And then the in-between position would be like, I think, really nice, blending, the two, and because you get the phase cancellation between the two and stuff. So this pickup here It's the bridge one. They advertise it as a 8.5 ohm resistance pickup. I've measured these ones. This one's like 11.5, which is pretty hot. This is like really hot. But unusually, the neck one is actually hotter than the bridge one. This one's, I can't remember exactly off the top of my head, but it was 12 or 13 ohm, maybe 14 thousand ohms. So it is dark, it is loud. So I wanted to mention like this, just the nature of these pickups, like this dark like hot sound. It's fine for like especially if you're adding like gain or distortion, and that's adding like some brightness with just the harmonic distortion, and so it's good for that kind of stuff, especially like leads. So it's definitely usable for certain things, but like I play a lot of like clean rhythm stuff, and they kind of feel a little dull, really dull. So just the way it works is as a general rule. The lower the resistance, the lower the ohm value, the brighter the pickup will be, but the less loud it will be. So I'll probably have problems balancing the two. And one thing I'm thinking about is, because I know the neck's going to be way bassier than this will be. It's already way bassier than this, and it's also way louder than this. So I'm probably going to do like just like a built-in. I'm just gonna run this one through a resistor with like a treble bleed, just to cut some of the low end and some of the volume, so that it, like the starting point will match. I'll probably put that on a switch, so I'll like have the option of just like going through this just full on. But then I want to have a switch where I can, bring it down to the usable in the combination. And actually, I want to put a bunch of switches. I want to put like this as they've got the case on the third wire here, so I can hook this up to a switch and do like a phase switch, and so I can put the two pickups out of phase with one another. It'll just create like a really bright sound, like what's his name, the guy in Queen, Brian May, like his guitar has like that type of thing going on. Some people do it. I don't know if I'll use it a lot, but it's quick and easy to do, and I have a whole bag full of switches. Another thing I'm planning on doing is maybe series parallel. I'll just try it. Like obviously, going in series with this really hot pickup, it's just gonna get super dark. But it might just be fun to have just like. I can just throw a switch anywhere on this thing. So I'm generally not using like the volume controls. Like if I want to play quieter, I'll just strum quieter, or I'll use like the fat boost on my amp. Like I've got that on a foot switch, so I can increase the volume if I need. And then I don't really use the tone either. I just kind of like, especially with how muddy this guitar already sounds, like I don't need it to sound any muddier. So I've got a bunch of holes, and then that I can put these switches through, and you can also mount switches just in the F hole and stuff. So like I've got plenty of space to play around with switches. So I've already been messing with this guitar a bit. I already took out the tone knobs a while ago just to see if that would help brighten it up, and I'd been meaning to swap out the pots, the 500K volume pots, for 1 meg pots, which would help brighten it as well. But I think what I'll do now is I'll put just like a 1 meg load on this pickup, and then I'll put like, well, I haven't looked into it yet, but maybe this one's supposed to be 500K, or maybe it's supposed to be 250K. I have to look into what, because I imagine these two pickups need different loads to sound their best, so I'll have to look into that. But alright, so I've got that disconnected. Sorry, I'm doing this all with one hand, so I'll just kind of temporarily thread this wire in to get it out of my way. And this is all kind of hard to do with one hand. And so this hole is actually very similar to the size of this pickup. It just barely doesn't just fall in. But actually it strums right there, so I can test out the sound without even, before I route it. So yeah, that already looks pretty good. I'll probably just put the old screws back in those holes, and so it looks like what I'll have to do is glue in little blocks of wood to span this, the gap right under there, to have something to screw these onto, and then I'll have to just like maybe a millimeter or maybe less along the perimeter of the existing hole to take it down totally flat, and maybe just down like a millimeter. So yeah, if it's, because the body's kind of curved here, so like actually it's only like the middle that really needs to be taken down. The sides are already kind of the right height. So I don't really understand what like guitar these are intended for. I tried actually fitting this on my Gretsch Electromatic, and even though the website says that for Filtertron lovers that this will cover the hole, when I took the Filtertron out and put this instead, there was like a hole like this big next to the pickup. So I was just curious if like I could use the neck version of that on the neck of my Gretsch, and it didn't seem like a good fit. But like this seems I can get this to work. Yeah, on the website they recommend you use like a mouse pad as like a spacer underneath, but like it just does not need a spacer. It just needs to be routed down. And most of the samples I've seen on the internet of people that have this pickup, like people have them in like the Gretsch Duo Jets and stuff, and those guitars are routed down to get this pickup to fit. Here's an idea I'm having suddenly, like because I already have these screw holes right here, and this already fits. If I got washers that are like wide enough, I could just screw this pickup kind of down using these screws with the washers that overlap. Alright, so I checked a little junk drawer with screws and washers and stuff, and I found something that looks like it'll work. a nut and then a washer. So I'm going to put the phone down so that I can tighten this, and so that saves me from having to fabricate a piece of wood to put across there and gluing it and hoping that will hold. I'd have to sand the existing center blocks to like get anything to stick to it. So if this works, and ideally I'd have like a rubber washer on the other side of this just to like kind of firmly hold everything stiff, just to provide the better friction. So that's something I'll look at trying to find. But yeah, let me begin by just trying to tighten this down. All right. And that's totally rock solid. I've got maybe like not an ideal amount of distance, but it should work. So I'll I have to unscrew this and connect the wire. But so I'll do I'll take it back apart. Now I've at least got a good plan for how I'll mount this. And that saves me a lot of work. If it turns out this is too close to the strings, I guess I will have to do the routing. But this at least saves me from having to glue in these blocks to screw into. Yeah, that looks cool. It's kind of super cool in like a weird primitive guitar kind of way. I like it. Alright, so I don't know how well that came across on the video. I just had just my camera right by the amp to try to get a fairly good representation of the sound, but it's not as good as like hooking up a real microphone and stuff. But in the room, it just kind of confirmed that like this is what that guitar needed. It just kind of, I don't know how to describe it. It like opens up the top end a little bit with just stuff that's missing, and it just kind of makes it a little more even, I guess. And you know, it takes away the crank crank sort of character of the P9, the original P90s on there, and yeah, it gives it a little more jangle or whatever, and the volume's lower, so I mean it's not apples to apples. Like it's kind of when you hear two things and one's louder, you're just like immediately like, well, that one sounds a little better, but you know, ultimately everything gets balanced in a mix, so like just because it's louder doesn't mean it's better. So yeah, I'm gonna go ahead with this change. I guess I'll put in the next video, I'll do all the wiring stuff I was talking about, because I don't have the switches with me right now. But yeah, so I guess this is the first installment of my journey of just kind of bringing the sound, fixing the sound on the Epiphone Casino. So for comparison, this is how the neck would sound. If I set the amp for how I'd maybe set it if I was EQing for the neck, and the bridge is totally empty and kind of lifeless, too thin. I'm gonna try with circuitry to balance the stock neck pickup with the new bridge pickup, and then if that doesn't work, I think I'll get like a kit and maybe hand wind a new neck pickup that's not as dull and not as hot, because I guess if you like scatter wind it, it opens up the top end more, and just if you wind it less winds, it opens up the top end more as well. So that's something I'll try if I probably will try that eventually, but in the next video I'll just try the circuitry with some resistors and capacitors and see what I can just figure out. I'll probably just test different values and I'll create some sort of circuit that brings the volume down but lets more high end through and cuts a little of the bass. So there'll probably be some combination of like a low cut and a treble bleed, or I don't know. It'll become apparent when I do it. So stay tuned if you are interested in this journey of kind of opening up the sound on an Epiphone Casino. All right.